Well, hello, class. Welcome to Unit 6. Believe it or not, we are in Unit 6, and tomorrow, which I just is unfathomable to me, is the start of November. That is insanity. So the good news is that we are that much closer to the end of the semester, which means we're that much closer to Christmas. And so some of you, I'm sure, have just a tremendous amount of stuff that needs to get done. You've got schoolwork and work and family life and all the things that come with that you need to complete. And so probably there's some stress that comes with that. And then thinking, how am I going to get everything done even this week is crazy to think about. There's always that silver lining that it's going to get done. It may not be in the way that we had thought, but it's going to get done. So I guess I'm kind of in that situation right now. So I'm so grateful. I mentioned in my email last night for your gracious responses to all that's going on in my family. It's one of those things that you never wish upon anybody. Your worst of enemies and your best of friends. Death is a hard, challenging thing, and so I've been thinking a lot about this reality, this death, and the stages of grief, and these steps that you go through, and what it does to you. So I've mentioned briefly I have this 4-month-old niece who was born with basically a half of a functioning heart, and um, she was discharged home twice, and every time it kind of got worse, and she was back in the hospital, and basically spent the first 4 months of her life at UCLA Medical Center, hooked up to all sorts of machines that were essentially keeping her alive. And so there were some great challenges that came with that. And, I'm married to a nurse who understands a lot of these aspects from a health standpoint and from a medical standpoint. She also spent time working at City of Hope, and so she was around death quite often with these patients that were, if you're at City of Hope or a cancer hospital like that, it's oftentimes your last ditch effort to survive and to heal cancer. So she's been in these situations, but there was something different. It was more raw, and it was harder to contemplate and to deal with, as it was someone that was so close to our family. I think about career, and I think about the things that we've talked about, how overcoming the job loss is oftentimes more challenging than it is to even lose a loved one, a spouse. And it's interesting. I think that there's a lot of truth to that, and I don't think that you can, even having gone through this last week's experience, make those blanket statements. Maybe on the whole, yes, that's the case. But when you go through this, it's also individualized, which is why it's so important that we really get to know our clients, which is some of what we even looked at last week with kind of doing this intake report and developing rapport with our clients and really getting to know them and their needs and what makes them tick even, and why they're there to see us. But it was challenging. It was very challenging. And I think the hardest thing was, for my family, our deepest desire is that we could kind of take these things upon us. Kind of this idea of like, I wish that if have things done differently, I could experience the pain. I could be the one that takes this on, as opposed to having them have to experience it. And so we're somewhat detached and removed. And so, I'm one that I operate in a world of words. I teach, I coach, I counsel. All of these things revolve around and involve the use of words. Every now and again, I preach at our church. I teach classes at our church. So basically 6 days a week, I'm doing something. I'm coaching soccer. I'm coaching 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds in soccer. It's all about words. And yet in a situation like this, you deal with the death of a loved one, especially a 4-month-old child. There are no words. And so you're left at this place of just simply being with people. And there's this kind of this almost therapeutic reality, I guess you could say, with just being with somebody. My brother-in-law, the father of this little girl, he called the other day before the funeral, which took place on Saturday of this past weekend, and he asked me if I'd be a pallbearer, and I said, yes, absolutely, of course, whatever I can do. And I simply told him, I said, we know the hope, the great hope that we have in Jesus, that Although this doesn't make sense, we know that he is weaving something beautiful together and using little Jaylee's life and her death for his glory. So we know that. But right now, even those words aren't the healing salve that you need. Although we need to remember that right now, I just need you to know that I'm here for you. And so I just sat in silence. And he talked, and I listened, and I, said yes, and I understand, but didn't say anything in response. And maybe an hour or two later, he texted my wife, his sister, and said, Jeff is such a great person to talk with. And I kind of chuckled, and I said, well, I didn't really say anything. I didn't have anything to say. I just didn't have any. I was at a loss for words. And so there are times when maybe we're working with clients, and there's just tears that flow, and we're being trained to offer words, to offer therapy. But sometimes even those words in therapy, they don't truly fulfill the need that our clients have. So sometimes just listening, and obviously being professional and taking in what's happening, but allowing space for that grief. So our question right now is, for the sake of this little girl and her family and our immediate family and friends and the onlooking world, is how do we grieve for the glory of God? And that's a challenge, but we're working through that day by day, prayerfully considering how our actions and our words and our deeds can do that. So I appreciate the time that you allowed me to kind of spend some time grieving and to walk through that process. The funeral was very healing. It was a great way to kind of put some conclusion to this situation. Now, of course, obviously the pain will be with my brother and sister-in-law for the rest of their lives, and their little 2-year-old boy will still experience the loss of his sister. Unfortunately, he won't remember as much as his parents do. So we don't ignore that. We don't repress these emotions, of course. And I'm sure that's, clinical psychology 101. Don't repress what's going on, but actually acknowledge and talk about it. But there is hope, and we will move on. And we will always look back, and we will remember her life. And hopefully it will make us all the better. So last week we had a lot of great things, a lot of good conversation, a lot of good questions and comments. And there was a couple that just stood out. I wanted to hit on really quickly. I know I'm kind of quickly transitioning and switching gears. We have a lot to cover in this next 8 minutes or so. But I wanted to pinpoint 2 things because I think they're really important questions having to do with what we read in Liptak in chapters 4 and 5. And I think they're actually quite easy to answer. So the first question is this: when is it appropriate or necessary to refer out? What does that process look like? And I don't know that there is a concrete answer. I think it's going to be different all the time. Okay, so I've worked with clients, and I have not had a situation where I've had to. Well, there have been situations that I felt as though I had to refer out. However, if I were to refer out to somebody, it was somebody that they had already been talking with. So I met with a client, and he just kind of wanted to pay money to talk with me. And it got to a point from an ethical standpoint where I just said, we can't meet anymore because we're not making any headwinds. We're not getting anywhere. And there were some issues at hand that I noticed. And had he not been also seeing a therapist, a clinical psychologist, I probably would have referred him out to some colleagues, and it would have been a professional referral, some people that I trust, maybe some options that I would provide, hey, I think that this might be a great next step. And then there's times when people say, hey, I need a new job. Okay, well, I think I've mentioned to you before, that's not what I do. I don't help you just get new jobs. Well, that's what I'm here for. Well, we're going to walk through a process, and if you're not willing to do that, then I can't work with you, but I can give you the name of somebody else who may be willing to do that. And then, of course, that's up to them if they want to move on with that. So it's different. And yet it's the same. It's if I don't feel like I can provide the services, or maybe it's too close. I would never consult with a family member from a kind of an actual client, paying client, coach, counseling relationship. I have a situation right now with a neighbor that I'm going to work with, and it's someone that I just, I want to see succeed, and so we're not going to charge him. So I wouldn't really even consider that to be professional. I'm using my services, my skill sets, but let's say something came up in the process of us working together. I would likely, if need be, I would refer out. So I don't know that you can concretely do that, but I think it's a great question, always something to be thinking about. So I actually get a lot of clients coming to me by way of referrals from others that ask, specifically clinical psychologists, a therapist, that they ask, hey, I need help with my career. Well, they say, I don't do that, but oftentimes it's my former students who are working with clients, and they say you can talk to one of my former professors who does that work. So that's a couple of different answers to speak to that. The next one was, how much time should the initial appointment be, since intake requires more time because of how much information is being gathered? This is what I do, and I'm just going to give you the straight shot of what I do. What I do is I think I've mentioned this before, I require my clients, if they're going to work with me, that they need to work with me for 4 sessions, okay? So, and that's typically a 45, almost always 16-minute time frame, okay? I don't put a parameter and say we're going to be done at 45 minutes, but I charge by the session, not by the hour. And so 45 to 60 minutes max is really where we're headed. So, and basically our first meeting is the intake. I take the entire time asking questions, because if I'm asking the right questions in the right way and kind of getting at the right content piece, I actually accomplish a lot more than just taking in information. So I think that you were given actually the intake assessment on page 29 in the LipTAC text, and you've been provided some amazing resources in this book. And so the beauty of this text is beg, borrow, and steal. Use what's there for you. It's here for the taking. So there's lots of great questions to be asked. And I use a lot of these things, but I've also adapted my own, which I will share with you at the end of the semester, kind of the things that I use, the tools that I use in the work that I do. I'm starting a new coaching relationship with a client tomorrow night, and I'm going to spend the first hour just asking questions. This is somebody that I've had in class before. I'm in a different program, and they are an up-and-coming career professional, and they like to make some wise decisions to get to where they want to get to, and so they're asking some good questions, and I'm going to spend an hour. And that's actually going to be our first session, because in that, one of the things that I do is on the front end, I say, what do you identify as the problem? Okay. And what do you identify as the solution? Great. So then we walk through the rest of the intake, and then so we'll ask a lot of questions and have a lot of answers. And at the end of our time, I will, on my own, I will write down what I think to be is the problem. So sometimes it's the same, and sometimes it's a little bit different. Maybe it's a similar twist, but with some different information. And then I will also eventually, through our working relationship, I will write down what I think is the solution or possible solutions for this client. And so I'm very intent in my listening, the questions that I'm asking, to make sure that I get the right information so that I can move in the right direction. So those are some great questions. You had a lot of them this past unit, so thank you for that. This upcoming unit, Unit 6, we have a lot going on. And so this is a great, very practical unit. We're looking at testing, assessment, career counseling, managing career information technology, self, and world of work assessment. So really what we're looking at here, we're looking at Anderson Van Vanderhee chapters 10 and 11, and then LipTAC chapter 6. You'll have your forum discussion, so for Unit 6, and then you have case study number 8, and there is no LipTAC 321 this week this unit, because at the end of this unit you have your vocation and calling response paper due. Okay, so lots to be done. Lots of great questions about the use of technology. I have not taken the LPC licensure exams myself, but one of the things that you can know is you'll have some questions on ethics, and you'll have some questions on technology and the use thereof as it relates to career counseling. So these are some especially important chapters to pay attention to as you prepare for taking those the exams, the licensure exams, as you get closer to that time frame. So a great week ahead of us. I'm going to share a couple other videos in the next couple of days. One will be on APA, and then probably toward the end of the week, I will share some information with you about the actual vocation and call and response paper. So in the meantime, if you have questions, feel free to call or email, come by the office. I'm in a new location now, second floor of Duke Academic Complex, right across from classroom number 619 if you're on campus. I'm in Duke 643. Would love to have you stop by. If not, like I said, call or email. But some great questions. There's some great assessments for you to take this week if you'd like to do that. And then I'll have some corresponding information that I'll share with you throughout the next couple of weeks. I did check. The documents appear to be okay on my end. So if for some reason they're not linking for you, or the video is not showing up, just click on the link or copy and paste the URL and it should come up for you. But I know that there's been some technical issues in the past, so hopefully we've mitigated that this unit. But again, have a great unit. There's lots of great content. I'll share more information with you in the coming days. Have a great unit, and we'll see you online.